And weirdly enough, Franz Ferdinand were playing on the other stage. So for a laugh, we were only having a laugh, it wasn't anything serious. No, I'm joking. But you all have already understood the significance of these anniversaries. Many of the men who fought in the trenches for my country in the First World War didn't have the vote because they didn't own property. None of the women who nursed soldiers in France and England, worked in the factories, had a vote, simply because of their gender. And when the end of the war came, that was rectified. It was a huge social catalyst in my country, the First World War. And I was in Belgium doing a gig this summer near the city of Ypres, and they have a fabulous museum there, a brand new museum commemorating the First World War. Very, very powerful. I went there, saw some amazing things. They have kind of dioramas with each exhibit of actors coming forward to speak the lines from diaries of people who fought in the First World War, people who were nurses and civilians and reporters. It's very, very powerful, all with subtitles, very powerful. For instance, I heard a nurse talking about working in a hospital there and saying that when we see such terrible carnage and can do nothing about it, it's not the dying who are damned, but we who witness it and do nothing. And this was in the middle of the bombardment of Gaza. It really struck me, the powerfulness of that idea, and that thought stayed with me so much that I spoke about it that night at the festival where I was playing. And someone afterwards said to me, you know, Bill, you're a pacifist. Why would you go to a war museum? What's that about? And well, I'd say to him, you know, well, it's an important thing. First of all, I'm a sucker for a museum, you know. I walked past the museum this morning in Fredericton, and were it not for the fact I was looking for a decent cup of coffee, I'd have probably waited till it opened and popped in there, just out of curiosity. But last November we were in Germany on the 75th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the pogrom when the SS, Nazi stormtroopers, went onto the streets of Berlin and other German cities and attacked Jewish businesses and Jewish citizens. And it was a very big deal for them in 1938, a very big deal for them, the anniversary. The Chancellor, Frau Merkel, made a speech of contrition. Newspapers all carried stories commemorating the event. And I thought to myself, what could I do as an act of respect for the victims of Kristallnacht myself? And it so happened that the City Museum of Hamburg has a permanent exhibit of the Jewish community in Hamburg from the time when they first arrived in the Middle Ages until they were ultimately snuffed out during the 1940s. It's the whole top floor of the City Museum. Its centrepiece is a reconstructed interior of a Hamburg synagogue. There was a bunch of German school children in there learning about Judaism when I passed through. And I was listening to everything on the translation headphones so I could find out what the exhibits were about. And I eventually came to a tall photograph, a life-size photograph of a World War I German soldier, all ready to go off to war. He had a flower in his hat, he had a brand new rifle, his spiky helmet, and the headphones told me that this guy was a Jewish citizen of Hamburg and how proud he was to be fighting for his country and going off to war, how excited he was that war had finally come after all this time of waiting. And I couldn't help but be reminded of my own grandfather, who wrote in his diary that the night war was declared, he and his cousin cycled 15 miles to join the crowds thronging outside Buckingham Palace to celebrate the declaration of war. And he left in his diary a little Union Jack flag and he'd written on it in big black letters, "War!" exclamation mark. It's always puzzled me that. I never knew my grandfather, he passed away before I was born, but I couldn't understand that. And seeing this German Jewish citizen in Hamburg, it stayed with me for a few days, trying to reconcile it, and eventually I came to the conclusion that they just didn't know any better. The British Army had not been in Europe since the Battle of Waterloo, 99 years. So my great-grandparents couldn't tell my grandfather how terrible war was. Their parents, who may have read about Waterloo, they really had no concept of it up close. It was just You know, they'd just heard reports of it. They hadn't really seen graphic images of the war. And, you know, those who fought in the First World War are no longer with us. Those who fought and experienced the Second World War are either in their late 80s or their early 90s, and they soon too will be gone. And those who survived the Holocaust will no longer be able to bear witness to that most unspeakable of crimes against humanity. And so it will be down to us, we who knew those people, we who heard those words, we who read those stories, to make sure that our children understand the true cost of war. I was a miner, I was a talker, I was a vowing between the wars. I raised a family in time of austerity with sweat at the foundry between the wars. I paid the union, and as times got harder, I looked to the government to help the working man, but they brought prosperity down at the armory, where I'm in for peace, me boys, between the wars. I kept the faith, and I kept voting, not for the iron fist, but for the helping hand. For this is a land with a wall around it, and mine is a faith in my fellow man. This is a land of hope and glory. Mine is the green field and the factory floor. These are the skies, all dark with bombers, and mine is the peace we knew between the wars. Call up the craftsmen, bring me the draftsman, build me a path from cradle to grave, and I'll give my consent to any government that does not deny a man a living wage. A living wage. Go find the young men, never to fight again. Bring up the banners from the days gone by. Sweet moderation, hearts of this nation, deserts us not, we are between the